Test Zion, Zion.
Yeah.
We burn a bowl over a lamp in order that it not set fire to a beam, or over feces because of a child, or over a scorpion so that it does not sting. Rabbi Yehuda said an incident came before Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai in Arab, and he said, I fear for him that he is liable for a sin offering. By the way, your picture of that scorpion was quite interesting. I don't like the way they look.
You like that? Okay.
If a Gentile lit a lamp, a Jew may use its light, but if he did so for a Jew, he may not use it. If a Gentile drew water to water his own animal, a Jew may water his animal after him. But if he did so for a Jew, he may not use it. If a Gentile made a gangway upon which to disembark, a Jew may disembark after him, but if he did so for the Jew, he may not use it. It once happened that Rabbi Gamaliel and the elders were arriving on a slip, and a Gentile made a gangway by which to disembark, and Rabbi Gamaliel and the elders disembarked on it. One more. All utensils may be taken on the Sabbath, and the doors with them, even though they were detached on the Sabbath, for they were not like house doors, which are not prepared. Okay.
Okay.
I heard a story. I remember one year when I one time that in the shtetls they used to people who sell meat and whatever else they sell some things on Shabbos they would leave the what do you call those things? The things that close and open, they would leave them off. So people would come and take what they needed, and then after Shabbos, they would come and pay for it. You
Ah,
know,
yeah.
I remember that,
Yeah.
an old little thing. So,
Pretty cool.
okay,
Yeah.
a person.
So now some dinim in muktzah. Okay, as we started off this parak about the doors and we said that they're not muktzah, and we're carrying on with more halachas of muktzah. Notel adam kurnas lefatzer bo isa egozim. You can take a hammer. Right, a hammer is normally used for malacha. So we're talking about a thing which is a klisha malachta leisur. So generally, a hammer is asur to use on Shabbos, and you would not be allowed to pick it up. But let's say you've got a bunch of nuts, and they're in their shells, and you've lost your nutcracker. So you're allowed to pick up the hammer and smash the shells with it. Not a problem. You're allowed to use the klisha malachta isur for something that's davar heter if you don't have another kli that is available. Okay. Similarly, a kordam lechtoch bois is a devela. A kordam is an axe, right? To chop a fig cake. Okay, and megera, a saw ligror by eshagvina. You can use a handsaw to cut the cheese. Magrefa also is wait, hang on. A megera is wait, what's it?
A,
Magrefa
a shovel, a shovel.
shovel, beg your pardon. Okay, magrefa is the saw. Ligrof by sagrogros, to cut the figs. Ve'es harachat ve'es hamazleg lates alav lekatan. So a winnowing fork or a mazleg is
Pitchfork, a winnowing shovel or a pitchfork.
okay. So these again, they normally cleave shemalach l'isur, but he wants to put food on it for a child, and I'm just trying to picture this situation. Why
Right,
why you would want to feed a child with a pitchfork? But
right.
um, apparently the concern is something about Tuma and Tara, that this Katan Kedarka Shel Davar. Um, oh,
Actually, it says
to
here that
pass
the
it over
pitchfork,
the other side of the river, right?
right, an older person would come across it. Right, right.
Okay. Um, Lekatan. It's a kush it's a karka lischov bo. So a kush is the wall, or the karka is it's a wooden needle which is used for weaving.
Right.
Lischov bo. And in order to stick something into the food to use it kind of basically like a cocktail,
A spear.
yeah, a
Yeah.
little spear, right? Or machat machat shel yad litol boy sakot, or a needle, which is normally used for sewing. Again, klisha malachta iser, but he's got a splinter, and he wants to get it out of his foot. or something like
Right.
that. Okay, so you can use the needle to poke it out. V'shel sakayim livtoach b'oisadelet, and the needle of the sack weavers, which is a bigger job, to open the door. So you can use it as a lockpick.
Right.
Okay, and all of these examples are just klisha malachta isur when which can be used for something that is heter. The general
Right.
rule of klisha malachta isur is you can't pick it up for no good reason. But if you have a malacha that needs to be done that is allowed on Shabbos, then you're allowed to use this kli for it. Okay. Kana shel zaysin. Interesting why this mission appears over here. You've got this reed that's used for examining olives while they're busy pickling. Okay, im yesh kesher barosha. So there's a thing called a knot on the top. It's called a knot, but what it is it's actually a bit of a receptacle that you use to see if there's liquid inside the bottom of the
Uh,
of your vat, and you can tell from that, if you're an expert olive maker, you can tell if the olives are ready yet. Okay, so now because it's a receptacle and so wooden kalim need a receptacle in order to be makabel tumah, and that's what the Mishnah is telling us is it's makabel tumah. Okay, the imlav ain makabel tumah. If it does not have that receptacle, then it's just a pshutei kli eitz, and we've learned all these things in kalim, right? So we know we're experts in this already. Okay, the imlav ain makabel tumah. Okay, why does it mention all of this? Ben kach or ben kach nitzal b'Shabbos. Whether it's makabel tumah or not makabel tumah, it is not muktzah. And that I think is the reason why we mention it in our context, is because we're dealing with the name of muktzah. But agav, that we're talking about this kli, we also mention whether it's makabel tumah or not. Rabbi Yossi Omer kol hakelim nitalim chutz min hamasar hagadol v'yatzed shel machresha. So he says all kalim may be picked up like this. So referring back to Mishnah base. So when you've got like your axe or your spade or things that are not
right.
normal klisha malachtul isur, all of them can be picked up and used for a heta usage. But what can you not do? So the masar hagadol, the masar hagadol is a it's a large saw that's used for cutting beams. Okay, and it's a big expensive piece of equipment. Okay, v'yased shal machresha, and the peg of the plow. Okay, again, this is why? Because it's an expensive piece of equipment, and because something like that is expensive, you don't use it for anything other than its intended purpose. So this is a new category of muktzah, which is muktzah machs chesron kis, because it is expensive and it's used for a malacha that is not allowed on Shabbos, and you wouldn't use it for anything else. So, for example, other classic examples of this are a shchita knife. Okay.
Right.
The shchita knife is something that the shochet looks after carefully. He doesn't want it to get any nicks. It needs to be nice and clean and sharp, and he's not going to use that for cutting up the meat on the table. This
So
is
a meal knife also,
Right. So
knife
that
for
knife,
roast
so
meal.
that shechita knife may not be moved. And you cannot use it for any other malacha because it is something that's fancy and expensive, and you're not going to use it for something else. Okay. Kol hakelim nitzalin letzorech v'shelo letzorech. And any kalim, any kalim that are klisha v'nachta leheter, may be picked up for any reason you like. So if you've got
I
a,
think we finished. Oh, I think you went too far.
hmm?
I think you went too far.
I'm still in the middle of this Mishnah. Kol hakelim nitzalim letzorech. So after the yatzed, after the peg of the plow,
Right.
right? Kol hakelim nitzalim letzorech v'shelo letzorech. You're allowed to pick them up whether you need them or you don't need them. So let's say you've got a teacup, and I always say that because I've got my coffee cup right over here. But let's say you just feel like having something to fiddle with in your hands, and you want to pick up the teacup. Not a problem. You're allowed to pick it up, and that is the halacha. But there is one dissenting voice. Rabbi Nachem Yomer ein nitalin ela letzorech. Says any kalim, even though the kli shemalachta leheter, you should not pick up. You should not pick up just stam. You should only pick it up if you're actually going to use it, not just because you want to fiddle with it. So he's got a very strict version of muktzah that which is not the halacha.
Okay.
Okay, and let's go
Um,
back to Yud Beis Vav.
One who writes two letters in two periods of forgetfulness, one in the morning and one in the afternoon. Rabbi Gamil holds him liable, but the Chachamim exempt him. Rabbi Eliezer says one who weaves three threads at the beginning or adds one thread to the woven fabric is liable, but the Chachamim say whether at the beginning or at the end its amount is two threads. One who sets two heddles on a home loom or a commercial loom, and one who positions the warp reeds of a sifter or sieve or a basket is liable. And one who sews two stitches, and one who tears in order to sew two stitches. One who tears in his anger for his dad and for his dead, and for all who act destructively are exempt. But one, but one who destroys in order to repair, his minimum measure for liability is the same as for repairs. Okay. For Gimel Gimel. Those near brought figs and grapes, and those far brought dried figs and raisins. And the ox went before them with his horns gold plated, and an olive crown on his head. The flute played before them until they arrived close to Yerushalayim. And when they arrived close to Yerushalayim, they sent before them at Bedrock Debakorim. The supervisors, the deputies, the treasurers went out to meet them. They went out according to the rank of those entering, and all the craftsmen in Yerushalayim stood before them and greeted them. Our brethren, men of such and such a place, come in peace. The flute played before them until they reached the Temple Mount. When they reached the Temple Mount, even King Agrippa would take the basket on his shoulder and entered until he reached the Temple Court. When he reached the Temple Court, the Levites intoned the song, I will extol you, O God, for you have raised me up, and I have not allowed my enemies to rejoice over me. The pigeons which were on the baskets were burnt offerings, and what they had in their hand they gave to the priests.
That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, Trimos.
Okay. Dalet Aleph. If one separates part of Truma and Maasros, he may take from it Truma for it, but not for another place. But Meir says he may take Truma and Maasros for another place. If one had produce in the storehouse and one gave a saw to a Levite and one saw to a poor man, he may separate another 8 saws and eat them. So says Rav Meir, but the comments say he may only eat separate in accordance with the exact quantity. The measure of Truma, a generous person, 1/40th. Beis Shammai says 1/30th. The average person 1/50th, and the grudging person 1/60th. If one separated Truma and found that it was 1/60th, it is Truma, and he need not separate. If he added it liable to Maasros, and he found that it was 1/61st, it is Truma. But he must separate again according to his custom, by measure, by weight, or number. And Yehuda says, even from that which is not close by. And Taharos. Okay, Zion. If one places clothes in a cubbyhole of the bathhouse attendants, Rav Elazar ben Azariah rules they are tahor, but the said come and say until he gives him the key or seal, or until he makes a sign. If one leaves his utensils from his wine pressing season to the coming wine pressing season, his utensils are tahor. And with an Israelite until he says, I had in mind to guard them. If someone was tahor and diverted his attention from eating, Rabbi Yehuda rules him tahor, since it is the way of Tomei people to separate from him, but the Chalan brew him Tomei. And if his hands were tahor and it diverted his attention from eating, even though he said, I know that my hands have not become contaminated, his hands are tamei because a person's hands are active. If a woman entered her home in order to bring out bread to a poor man, and she went out and found him standing next to loaves of truma, and similarly, if a woman went outside and found her friend sitting, stirring coals under a pot of truma, Rebbe Kiva rules a tamei, while the sages rule a makahor. If Elias and Pila said, why does Rabbi Akiva rule a tamei while the sages rule a tahor? Because women are gluttonous, and she is suspected of uncovering the pot of a friend in order to know what she is cooking. Okay. We have Menachos. Okay, Ted Zion. No communal offerings require leaning except the bull, which comes from any of the commandments, and the he-goat designated to be sent to Azazel. Reb Shimon says even the he-goats for idolatry. All offerings of individuals require leaning except for the Bakor offering, the Misa offering, and the Pesach offering. And hair performs leaning and brings libation, so makes the Tumorah exchange. All must perform leaning except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, a blind man, a non-Jew, a slave, an agent, and a woman. Leaning is considered a reminder of the precept. It is done on the head with 2 hands. In the place where the leaning is performed, the animal is slaughtered, and the leaning immediately precedes the slaughtering. There is a stringency to the right of leaning, of right of leaning over the right of waving, and a stringency to the side of waving over the right of leaning. One may perform waving on behalf of all the fellow offers, but one may not lean on behalf of all the fellow owners. The stringency of waving is that waving applies both to the individual and communal offerings while living and while slaughtered. When slaughtered, when living matter and with non-living matter, which is not the case with leaning. Okay.
Okay.
And the dark. Okay. Uh, One is prepared by never to benefit from his father and wants to give no the next one. But the nether of a widow or divorcee shall stand against her. How? This is the general rule. If any woman had entered into her own authority even 1 hour, he cannot revoke her nether. There are 9 Naros whose Nadarim stand: a Bagaris who is an orphan, a Nahar who became a Bagaris and is an orphan, a Nahar who has not become a Bagaris and is an orphan, a Bagaris whose father died, a Nahar who became a Bagaris and a father died, a Nahar who had not yet become a Bagaris and a father died, a Nahar whose father died and after her father's death she became a Bagaris, a Bagaris whose father is living, a Nahar who became a Bagaris and a father is living. Now, Yehuda says, also, if one married off his mind a daughter and she became widowed or divorced and returned to him, she is still a Nara. If a woman said, "Come on my benefit regarding father or your father if I work for your benefit, or cut on my benefits for you if I work for the benefit of father or your father," this can revoke. At first, they used to
Oh,
say there
that's
are
it.
three women. That's
That's
it,
it.
right? And
Yeah.
tomorrow we start Nazir.
Nazir, correct.
Okay.
Right.
Have a great day. Wash it out of foolish
Have a
lemma.
lovely day. Okay. Well,